Okie dokie. Where are we? I think we're live. It says I'm live. Receiving content. Nice. Okay. All right.
白岩学園3年 B 組の皆さん、こんにちは。
All right, so, oh gosh, okay, I've got a copy of my, The Essential Talmud, super duper ultra mega important, and here we are. Oh, Mr. Trent, hey buddy, how's it going? So, we're gonna get back to, Los Talmud. And before I do, there is a thing that is just on my mind, and it's a subject that is touchy. It's a touchy subject. So I kind of want to be specific in how I outline it. And the idea is as follows. In order to have a secure and long-term future, we have to be careful, generally, about our conduct and our actions and our thoughts and our words. And if we are going to be successful, we must be as immaculate as possible. And this means caring for the safety of not only ourselves, but our family and our friends and our community. Now, this is important. All three of you listening, seriously, there are, in every population, there is always a selection within that population that are capable of and willing to behave in ways that would be ungood for the net population, inasmuch as there could end up being a compromising of the population in some fashion. What I'm saying is, don't be silly. Don't do things that are going to get you in trouble, whoever you are. And the reason for this is because it doesn't, if any one person does something silly, it doesn't only affect that one person. It affects everyone that they know, up to and including friends and family. So, all I'm saying is, be safe, be smart, don't be silly. Spread the word. With that said, I've decided that I'm going to offer perfunctory remarks on my stream. This is a stream of peace, number one. We are all about radical love and inclusion here. Diversity is our strength. We believe this wholeheartedly because to not believe it would be ungood, double ungood. Also, we advocate nothing, no exhortations. This is only for the purposes of a combination of humor and or understanding. No more, no less. Alright, so with that said, I suppose this is as good a time as any to just dive right into good old Essential Talmud. I'm coming up on when I have to turn this one in, and I've decided on the next book that I'm going to read, which is going to be very fun. Very, very fun. And for this, let's see, I've got two sections that I kind of want to read. Oral Law, the First Generations, and Oral Law, the Era of Zugot, or Pairs. Kind of want to read that. That'll have to be done in 2 parts. I have to return this book on the 3rd. So perhaps I'll read those 2 sections tomorrow and the next day? I don't know. Because I've only got, let's see, 30th, 31st. It looks like the 3rd is on Sunday? That doesn't seem right. No, it's Saturday. Okay, I have to return this on Saturday. Alright, so that means I've got Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, so I've got 3 days. 3 more days to read this, which means I only have 3 sections, so those 2 about the oral law will take 2 whole days. That's a hell of a lot. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and throw it out to chat, I think. And let's see, we already read the persecution and banning of the Talmud. We didn't read the redaction of the Talmud. Structure, layout, not terribly impressive or interesting sounding to me. Prayers and benediction sounds pretty good, though. Actually, prayers and benediction sounds awesome. I think I'm going to go with that one. There's also marriage and divorce. Civil law, criminal law, we already did. Sacrifices. Let's see here. I'm kind of the opinion that I want to go with prayers and benedictions. That seems like the kind of thing that I kind of want. I think there was one that was about barriers. Let me see here. Festivals, marriage, divorce, civil, criminal, ritual, purity, and impurity. Yeah, we already addressed. We went into that. At the moment, I think I just want to go with prayers and benedictions. I think that's the direction that I'm going to go. All right, so here we go. Oh yeah, geez. Let me get back to the main image. Well, then again, this one is kind of nice. This was one of the first images that I used back when I first started streaming, so maybe I'll leave this one up. Yeah, sorry about the volume. The volume has been a persistent issue. My apologies. At any rate, the next book that I'm going to be getting into is going to be actually one of the books of the Talmud, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be Kodashim. There are a couple of others. I'm very interested in the sacrifice portion. So, I mean, see here, we're coming up on August, September. Well, we could make it just like a series of what do you call? Spooky books and spooky things. I really want to sort of lead into Halloween. I love October for Halloween. So maybe I'll do like an interrelated series of books within the Talmud, like chapters that'll somehow relate to these things. Okay, anyway, we're going to go to Prayers and Benedictions, page 141. Cultural exchange. We are learning about religion. This is fantastic. SS, whose channel is this? This is actually a gentleman by the name of Ixi Lux live streams, and this is one of his alternate channels. Kind of a weirdo, but that's fine. Likes cats, what are you gonna do? Alright, so prayers and benedictions. Here we go. Alright, in the First Temple era, gosh, I had some yogurt, so I'm gonna have to clear my throat. Sorry about that. My weak spot is freaking yogurt and honey. It's embarrassing, whatever. I'm trying to go keto, and I managed to get rid of French fries, potatoes, breads, pancakes, everything. I managed to get rid of everything. The only thing that I still have a rough time with, weirdly, is yogurt and honey. I don't know why I love yogurt and honey. It's the weirdest thing. Anyhow, okay, in the First Temple era, prayer was entirely... Oh, excuse me, I had my headphones on there. My voice is probably going to change a touch because now I can hear myself. In the First Temple era, prayer was entirely spontaneous. When a man felt the need to petition his God or thank him, he prayed in his own words and on his own ground, and in times of trouble or particular stress, he would come to the temple to utter his prayers there. The formal regulation of prayer had already commenced. The first psalms had been composed and were sung by the Levites on special occasions in the temple, so that the general public was aware of the existence of certain official prayer ceremonies that took place at fixed times. The need for a recognized version of prayers became pressing at the beginning of the Second Temple era. Many of the returning Babylonian exiles had only sparse knowledge of the Hebrew language and of basic conceptions of Judaism. When they wanted to pray, they lacked both language and content. The Great Assembly therefore decided to compose a standard prayer reflecting the wishes and aspirations of the entire people. It was composed of 18 benedictions, each dealing in brief with one subject. This prayer, most of which has survived to the present day and still constitutes the basis of the synagogue service, consists of 3 opening benedictions, 3 closing benedictions, and 12 intermediary ones containing various requests and supplications. In the Meshnaic era, the first 3 benedictions were named Avot, parenthetical fathers, and parenthetical, in praise of the faith of the fathers. Gevurot, parenthetical power, and parenthetical, reflecting the power of the Almighty, culminating in the resurrection of the dead, and Kedusha, extolling His holiness. The concluding prayers are known as Avodah, parenthetical worship, and parenthetical supplication for the restoration of worship in the temple and the return of the Spirit of God. Hadoah, thanksgiving for life and all that is good, and Shalom, a request for peace in the world. The 12 intermediary benedictions are various requests, both universal and particular, for knowledge, repentance, forgiveness, redemption, healing of the sick, success of crops, ingathering of the exiles, righteous judgment, punishment of the wicked, reward of the pious, rebuilding of Jerusalem, restoration of the rule of the house of David, and, finally, a request that all these supplications meet with response. That's actually a very interesting point there. The prayer as a whole is known as Shemone Esrei, parenthetical, the 18 benedictions, or merely Tefillah, parenthetical, prayer, and parenthetical, and it has been the focal point of all Gemish prayer books since it was written. Note to self, I think I'm going to learn about the 18 benedictions just for the... I'm gonna have to write it down. I have to write it down. If I don't write it down, I'm never going to remember. I'm going to write it down. Okay, things to look up. 18 benedictions. I am confident that I'll be able to find something in the local public library branch. Let me rephrase, that can be shipped to the local public library branch so that I can learn about the 18 benedictions. There we are. Fixed times were determined for prayer corresponding to the times of public sacrificial ceremonies in the temple. One prayer was recited at dawn at the hour of Tamid Shel Shahar, parenthetical, morning sacrifice. Geez, they got sacrifices in the morning. I mean, I bet it was probably like some grapes or something, so not terribly impressive, but whatever. A second at the time of Minna, parenthetical, evening sacrifice. I suppose those would be grapes, or I'm sorry, raisins rather. And the Mariv, parenthetical, evening prayer. And parenthetical, they said evening prayer twice. Perhaps one is like a later evening than the other. Was said in the evening or at night and was not directly connected with the time of sacrifice. The status of this third prayer was not clear, and hundreds of years later scholars were still arguing the question of whether it was binding, like the other two, or optional. This controversy over a point that does not appear vitally important led at one time to a, quote, revolution, end quote, in the procedure of the Sanhedrin, when the strong-willed Nasi when the strong-willed Nasi, Rabban Gamaliel, and clashed with the greatest scholar of the age, Joshua ben Hananiah, and was eventually deposed. Once the wording and timing of prayers were permanently fixed, it was the turn of another important institution, the synagogue. Since prayer was based on the needs of the community as a whole, it was decided that services should be conducted in public. The standardization of the prayer service did not, however, affect the private supplications that each individual directed at God in his own style and according to his own needs. The question of how many people constitute a, quote, public, end quote, is an ancient one, and the answer, too, is so old that we do not know exactly when it was first given or whether it was accepted as part of the basic tradition of oral law. Be that as it may, it was determined that 10 men made up a congregation for purposes of public worship, hence the term minyan, parenthetical number, and parenthetical, meaning the minimum of 10 adult males permitted to conduct a public prayer service. The synagogue, therefore, was the place where the local congregation convened in villages, towns, or suburbs in order to pray, and it was also utilized as a place of assembly when necessary. Most synagogues, that place of assembly, of course, they refer to the structure synagogue, but I tend towards the Christian view of the church is the people. All right. Most synagogues also served as schools for local children and sometimes as Batei Midrash, parenthetical religious academies, and parenthetical for adults. The synagogue was known poetically by the people as Mikdash Me'at, parenthetical, little temple, and parenthetical, but could not actually substitute for the temple itself since the aims of the institution were different: community prayer, study, and assembly. In Jerusalem itself, many synagogues existed while the temple was still standing. Some served certain areas of the city or people of specific origin, such as the synagogue that served those Jews who had returned over the years from Babylonia and who maintained contact with one another. There were also synagogues whose congregations were composed of people of the same occupation or profession. Synagogue of lawyers, I'm sure. One of the sages wrote the relation between the synagogue and the temple. Rather, they wrote of the relation between the synagogue and the temple. Quote, "In the early morning hours, people would come to the temple to attend the morning service. From there, they would go to the synagogue for the morning prayer service and would return to the temple for additional sacrifice on holiday and the Sabbath, and then again to synagogue for the Musaf prayer." End quote. Thus the temple was the place of ritual sacrifice, where the individual could seclude himself in a corner and offer his own private supplication whenever he felt the urge. The synagogue, on the other hand, was the place for community prayer, where the individual was a participant rather than a spectator. It's actually kind of interesting. From the first, the links of the synagogue to the temple were actually, I'm going to just check. Okay, good. Yeah, that's right. That could be well, the Pharisees were actually money changers. Jesus did, in fact, flip a table or two. Okay, coming back to the text. From the first, the links of the synagogue to the temple were emphasized, and all synagogues were built facing Jerusalem, while those built in Jerusalem faced the temple itself. Note this also is echoed in Islam with the facing of everyone during prayer to Mecca. In later generations, during and after the Talmudic era, synagogue architecture emulated the structure of the temple. The Holy Ark corresponding to the Holy of Holies in the temple was located at the foremost end. The Torah read in the central area, approximating the great altar in the temple. In the Second Temple period, the regular prayer service was augmented by the reciting of the Shema Yisrael prayer, parenthetical, quote, "Hear, O Israel," hear as in to listen. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one," end quote, and parenthetical. This prayer evokes the general obligation to study and memorize the teachings of the Torah at all times, an obligation observed by the individual to the extent that circumstances, to the extent that circumstances and time permitted. In order to give this precept fixed form, 2 excerpts were selected from the Torah that elucidate the basic tenets of the Jewish faith and exhort gems to commit them to memory. Parenthetical, Deuteronomy 6:4 through 9, 11:13 through 21, end parenthetical. These were recited in the early morning and in the evening. For many generations, the 10 Commandments were also added, but this custom was suspended because certain heretical sects claimed that these verses contained the essence of the Torah, and that all the rest was marginal. In order to demonstrate that the sections recited daily did not epitomize the Torah, the sages decided to omit the 10 Commandments. The Shema Yisrael recitation was usually linked to the public prayer service, and various ways of reciting it were established. Thus, the basic format of prayer consisted of recitation of excerpts from the Torah, together with supplication and thanksgiving. I'm just going to go ahead and check chat for a moment. Sometimes it's fun to see what people are chit-chatting about. Shemanoah Ezra, which reads in part, "And for slanderers let there be no hope, and may all wickedness perish in an instant, and may all your enemies be cut down speedily." Man, that's brutal. Very brutal. Yeah, there is a I can't remember what it was. In fact, I think it was in the was it Kodashim? I think it was within the Kodashim section of the Talmud. There's a specific claim that any Gentile that was studying the Torah was subject to death. So, from a hard religious standpoint, we are, all of us in this stream, we're actually skating on thin ice. So now we get to be edgy teenagers. Hurrah. Continuing. As these synagogues had existed for so long and the format of prayer was well established, no basic changes took place in the prayer procedure after the destruction of the temple, though it was necessary to alter the phrasing of certain benedictions and to include prayers for the rebuilding of the temple and restoration of worship. One of the alterations introduced into the service shortly after the destruction was not, however, connected to the temple itself, but to the problem of the heretic, Gnostic, and Christian sects. At that time, the small sects were proliferating and advocated a syncretistic... What a weird... syncretistic. Strange. Alright, anyway. I kind of want to look it up. I'll look it up. If I don't look it up, it's just going to bother me. I'm going to look it up. Syncretistic. Okay, where are we? Syncretistic. Syncretism, reconciliation or fusion of differing systems of belief, as in philosophy or religion, especially when success is partial or the result is heterogeneous, merging of two or more originally different inflectional forms, the attempted reconciliation or union of irreconcilable principles or parties. As in philosophy or religion, specifically the doctrines of a certain school of Lutheran Church, followers of Calixtus, who attempted to effect the union among all Christians, Protestants, and Catholic. I'll be darned. The ecumenical movement of Christianity, huh? Okay, continuing. There we are. Syncretistic combination of religions. There were Judeo-Christians and Gnostics who reconciled their beliefs with continued Jewish worship. These sects, either in self-defense or for purposes of ideological harassment, often employed measures that Judaism had always roundly condemned, namely informing on their brethren and denouncing them to the Roman authorities. Matters reached such a pass that the Sanhedrin sages at Yavne decided to add the Shemone Esrei, an additional benediction, parenthetical, which is in fact a curse, and parenthetical, on heretics and informers. Oh, definitely. I've got to write that one down. Holy cow, that's... I think this is... I've heard about this. To add the Shemone Shemone Esrei. Okay. Sorry about pausing to write things down, but I've got a little tiny notepad that I use for just this purpose. Just in case I forget something that I know is going to be important, I don't need to worry about it too much because I've got it written down somewhere. The search for a suitable author for such a, quote, benediction, end quote, led them to the scholar known as, quote, Little Samuel, end quote, who was renowned for his great humility and even more for his tolerant attitude toward enemies. The text he composed was inserted in the prayer, which now consisted of 19 sections. I'll be darned, though it retained its traditional name. Since written books were most precious in those times, and there was a tendency to avoid recording matters pertaining to the oral law, the various prayers were not written down but rather memorized. Not everyone, of course, knew the prayers by heart. This was particularly true in the early days of the Second Temple era, when traditions as well as reading and writing were transmitted from father to son, as the Torah commanded. It was at this time that the post of the Shlaya Tzibur, parenthetical, public emissary, end parenthetical, was established. Public emissary. Interesting that it's very interesting that the Torah was transmitted orally from father to son. I mean, that makes sense because there was an exemption made on women from studying the Torah, so women did not, within traditional Jewish law, theology, and cultural observances, women were typically not very well versed in the Torah, so it makes perfect sense that, father to son. That's interesting. That is actually very interesting. Because if you had that would actually create a situation where there'd be a lot more emphasis on the meaning of what it is to be a part of this particular group. That actually is interesting. Continuing, it was at the time, post-Shemlama, public emissary, so in some way it's almost like an emissary, or whatever, anyway, we'll continue. The emissary was well acquainted with the formula of the prayers. He recited them aloud so that the congregation could pray in unison from a number of generations, and certainly in the Mishnaic and Talmudic periods. This task did not call for any kind of incantation or singing. The man chosen as the public emissary, Shlaya Tzibur, was usually a respected member of the congregation, capable of leading others in prayer. It became customary. Parenthetical, the custom is still prevalent, though no longer necessary, end parenthetical, to repeat the prayers aloud so that those who did not know the words could recite them after the Shlaya. The basic format of public prayer could not retain its original simplicity for a number of reasons. First, the need arose to add prayers for special occasions throughout the year, Sabbath and holidays, fasts, droughts, or various calamities. The wording of the prayers was amended and expanded so that the simple Shema Noah Esra, for example, took on different forms, and as time passed, the process was intensified. They keep throwing just all these words. Piyutim, parenthetical liturgical poems, and parenthetical, and supplications were appended. Some have survived, and others, including thousands of piyutim, were relevant. Sorry, they broke up the word with a hyphenation at a page break. Were relevant only to their time and place, and only remnants of them have remained in compilations or manuscripts. Certain practical questions also arose in each age regarding the rules for prayers, time and place, exact phrasing, amendment, and shortening. These queries were studied by the Mishnaic sages, who expressed varying opinions. Because different customs had evolved in various communities, the sages were obliged to introduce uniformity and establish clear rules. In addition to the brief and longer daily prayers, there were also various benedictions. The Torah had already hinted at the obligation to extol and thank God for food, and this concept was expanded in the Talmud thus: the whole world belongs to God, and man has no right to enjoy it without asking his leave. The various benedictions, parenthetical, mainly Harakot Ha-Nehenin, end parenthetical, recited by those enjoying some pleasure, are in fact requests for such permission. Oh, so you have to ask permission to enjoy things. That's actually kind of interesting. Imagine having a culture in which it was actually impermissible to enjoy something without God in some way condoning it or asking permission from God so that you might enjoy something. That seems really weird. I'm not... It seems there's something there. I'm a little bit tired at the moment, as per usual. I'm always a little bit tired. We're at minute 40 plus minus. I think what I'm going to do actually is, I think I'm going to play a song. Is what I'm going to do. So, what track is this? What do we have here? Properties. Okay. All right. Speaking of seeking permission to enjoy things, here's just a hair of degeneracy while I have a little sip of water. AFK BRB.
Grace on the water, lips like sugar, lips like sugar. Just when you think you've caught her, she glides across the water. She calls for you tonight to share this moonlight. You flow down the river, she laughs and lips like sugar, Siamese twin, alone in the river, mirror kissing, mirror kissing. Lips like sugar kisses, lips like sugar kisses, lips like
All right, so that was good old Echo and the Bunnymen. Love those guys. And yeah, sorry about the jump in volume and then back down to like low volume. That's completely my fault. I forgot to adjust audio levels on that one. I wasn't, whatever, it doesn't matter. Moving on. Sorry about that. At any rate, let's continue. Where are we? In addition to these routine benedictions, there were, let's see here, sages engaged in classification. Yeah, okay, yeah. In addition to the brief and longer daily prayers, there were also various benedictions. The Torah had already hinted at the obligation to extol and thank God for food, and this concept was expanded in the Talmud thus: the whole world belongs to God, and man has no right to enjoy it without asking his leave. The various benedictions, mainly the something or other, recited by those enjoying some pleasures, are in fact requests for such permission. Again, just a fantastic concept there. The Talmud also states, yes, I'm rereading this paragraph. The Talmud also states more emphatically that he who enjoys the blessings of this world without benediction is violating sanctity. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to read that one more time because that's actually, there's something in there. Again, these are interesting concepts. The Talmud also states more emphatically that he who enjoys the blessings of this world without benediction is violating sanctity. So in order to enjoy things, or rather, in order to not violate sanctity, you have to request permission to enjoy things. That is interesting. That actually is kind of interesting. And in some kind of a way, I kind of agree with that, only in the sense that, I mean, obviously, you know, there are a shitload of qualifiers there, but, I kind of do get that. And this reminds me back when I was in my late 20s and I was going through my psychedelic phase, and I decided that everything was God for some reason. And in some sense, I still kind of do think that way. It occurred to me that having gratitude and respect was just outstanding. As where in our current civilization, everything is regarded as disposable and irrelevant and meaningless. There is almost a tacit contempt for reality and things, and I don't really like that. It seems to me kind of ungood. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. SS. Yeah. I'll go ahead and I'll leave this up for a little while. I don't know how long, but I will leave. I'll leave it up for a little while. I keep forgetting to delete the old ones. All right, moving on. The Talmud states more emphatically that he who enjoys the blessings of this world without benedictions is violating sanctity. Thus, many benedictions were composed for recitation before partaking of various pleasures, mainly food and drink. Mishnaic and Talmudic sages engaged in clarification of the wording of benedictions, composed new blessings for every type of foodstuff, and sought rules to define the hierarchy of benedictions, from the most general to the most specific. And yeah, just because it's a thing. I like to pray before meals, and I've gotten to the point now where if I don't, I just go with the Lord's Prayer because it's the easiest. And so that's just what I say before I eat. So in some weird way, I'm kind of doing something like this. It's weird. What are you going to do? The addition to these routine benedictions, in addition to these routine benedictions, there were many blessings for events. There is a special blessing to be recited when some event rejoices the heart, and in contrast, a benediction for occasions of sorrow and catastrophe. The Mishnaic sages said that, quote, a man must recite a benediction over evil as over good, end quote. I'll have to remember that. And should endeavor to accept whatever occurred joyfully. This obligation to bless evil occurrences is not merely a minor detail within the general precept, but reflects an outlook of life. Where other faiths believed in dualism or in two divinities, one creating only good and the other generating evil, Judaism always believed in one all-embracing entity. This viewpoint also found expression in the daily prayer and in the benedictions recited in the event of catastrophe, recalling the words of Isaiah that were also quoted in the prayer service, quote, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things, end quote. That's from the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 7. The benedictions related not only to such generalized issues, but also to various minutiae of everyday life and of nature, on the basis of the conviction that a man should relate his life and all that he saw around him to the all-encompassing faith. Thus there is a benediction to be recited upon seeing the ocean for the first time, upon seeing strange animals, upon seeing rare natural phenomena, and even for ostensibly prosaic occasions, upon seeing the first blossoms of spring on the rain, and even on beautiful women. These subjects are discussed at length in the Talmud, mainly in the Barakot tractate, which is devoted to benedictions. All right. So there we are. That was our little chapter for the evening. So let me just check to see if I have any other. What's this? What is this? I think I have one more track that I could play, which I might. I'm not sure, though. I've got a copy of Change Links, and last time I was hoping to find... typically they have a poem, and I wanted to read the poem, because sometimes they're pretty out of control, but I don't see one. These are mostly just calendar points and a couple of articles. Apparently there's a U.S. transgender survey that I can participate in, so I'm not convinced that I'm qualified, but it's tempting. Very, very tempting. Blueprint for impeachment. Apparently they're still trying to push impeachment. DA Jackie Lacey and the death penalty. Don't care. But the calendar section is very, very dense. It's huge. It seems as though, because they used to have a lot more, like this is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is only 8 pages. Typically there would be another 4 pages or so. So this is a very short one, a short issue. So yeah, I don't... Bummer. There's no... Yeah, we're not going to get a poem today. Shit. Alright, well that's too bad. Anyhow, there is, interestingly, some kind of an event that's going to be coming up, and I want to read a little bit about that. Interfaith Communities, Vigil for Peace, Food Co-op, Welcome Home LA, People of the World Migration Club, Learning and Exploration. I think that's the one that I want to go to, I think. But I'm not sure. Because there are a couple of these things. I mean, there are several weird things that are going on. Let's see here. That's the one right there. That's the one. Okay, you guys, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read this and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to go to. Because I'm totally, like, legit, I'm actually going to go to this. Here in Los Angeles, there is going to be, on Sunday the 4th, Committee for Racial Justice presents, and this is in all caps, the word reparations, : an idea whose time has come, ? And the description is childcare provided. A conversation is taking place. We can have that conversation, and we should have that conversation. That is a conversation that we should have. A conversation is taking place about whether or not Black Americans are entitled to reparations and compensation for enslavement, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and a host of other crimes against humanity. Trudy Goodwin and Bob Gord will lead an examination of the chief arguments for and against reparations, using videos of recent pro and con testimony in Congress as points of departure for discussion. How can I not want to go to that? How can I not? And it's going to be 2.5 hours. So it's going to be a hell of a thing. That's going to be one hell of a thing. And let's see, I sort of want to go to like a couple of other things. Civil gang injunctions. That's all the way in Ventura. I mean, Ventura is all fine and well, but I'm not going to freaking Ventura. Whittier, not going to Whittier. What do we have here? Bicycle education, don't care. Pan-Africans Women's Day, ACLU SoCal Westside Schools, First Advocate Training. Well, let's read about that one. Okay. And no, I cannot stream it. Margetelica Bortz. I wish I could, but I can't. In order to stream, I have to have 1,000 subs. So, and my phone isn't set up for streaming anyway, but what I'd like to do is I do have a camera with a crappy mic, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and get audio and upload it. So that's very likely what I'm going to do. Maybe at some point I'll get myself a nice phone and then learn how to stream, but that's down the line. So here's one that I might want to go to. Let's read the description. ACLU SoCal Westside Schools and Communities First Advocate Training. Most of us want a safe neighborhood, a healthy family, and good schools for our children. But for nearly 4 decades, big corporations have not been paying their share, leaving California at the bottom third of states in public education. We will talk about closing a 40-year-old corporate property tax loophole and what you can do to pass this during, it doesn't seem terribly impressive or interesting. Never mind. Docu-Warrior, welcome orientation, orientation thing. Okay, mind-body support circles at Watts Healthcare. KPFK station board monthly meeting. I always kind of want to go to those. Because KPFK is... Okay, so nobody here knows what KPFK is. That's a local radio station, and I think it's 90.7. I listen to a lot of KPFK. I also listen to KCRW a lot as well. Both of them are progressive news stations. One is much more progressive than the other. KPFK is the one that I personally have dubbed K-racism. And that's because KPFK is basically all racism all the time. That's their main topic and talking point. It always somehow comes back to systemic racism. So I always kind of want to go to one of those. And let's see here. It's not that far. It's not that far. It's like it's a little bit of a drive. But I think I could make it to that. I might go to the KPFK thing. Oh, wait, but that's a board meeting. I think I might have to be a board member. And it's from like 10:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. But they do pride themselves on being open in public. I'm going to go. I'm just going to see what happens. I'm going to go. Ciclavia, which is awful. That's where they close down like a street or whatever, and then like a bunch of chicks and like beach cruisers come out, and they don't know how to ride their bike in public, and so they just crash, and it's awful. OC Zine Fest, Rooted Men's Gathering, hosted by Swords and Shields Men's Group, faith-based organizations. Rancho Cucamonga. Forget that, dude. Rancho Cucamonga that's so far. Summer Public Awareness by Sisters Joseph Orange. Where is that? It sounds far. I'm not going to deal with that. Media discussions at Beyond Baroque. Again, I say almost want to go. 49th National Chicano Moratorium Commemoration. Ya basta con racista Trump. Build self-determination. Resist white supremacy. Tierra y Libertad. The 49th commemoration continues to honor this 1970 moratorium and its martyrs by resisting the Trump administration's ethnic cleansing policies that are reversing many laws. This sounds very interesting. Let's see what it says on the next page. Protecting not just Chicanos, Mexicans, and Raza. For those who don't know, Raza is race, but all people. Join the program E-Rally. That's very clever. At noon to 5 p.m. in Salazar Park. Whittier. Oh, come on. Whittier is so far. I don't want to go to freaking Whittier, dude. But this is interesting though. Contact Jaime Cruz, Chair National Chicano Moratorium Committee, and Miguel Angel Perez, Minister of Information, National Brown Berets, de Aztlan. Anyone? Aztlan? Anyone? Co-chair, National Chicano Moratorium Committee. Again, I say, very interesting. I think I'd be immediately kicked out because I don't blend, but it would be, and it's in Whittier. Anyone that doesn't know, Whittier is not fun to be around. OC Racial Justice, $5. It's not bad. Where is it though? OC Racial Justice Collaborative General Meeting. Come and meet other like-minded racial justice activists who are working toward the common goal of eradicating racism through allyship and the calling out of racist policies, ideas, and actions within our own community. Please join us and become a part of this vital human rights and anti-racist movement. We welcome you to bring your own snacks or snacks to share, okay? BYOS. And it doesn't say where, notably, which makes me think this is actually a local Antifa production. Alright, and that's out there. Phil Ox Revolution, live music, rare film clips. One good song with a message can bring a point more deeply to people than 1,000 rallies. Quote, and I won't be laughing at the lies when I'm gone, and I can't question how or when or why when I'm gone. Can't live proud enough to die when I'm gone, so I guess I'll have to do it while I'm here. End quote. Wasn't that lovely? Ventura Water Reclamation, The Ditch, Two Parties. All right, so I don't. So basically, so far, I just see one that I totally want to go to, that I know that I can absolutely get to. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and go to that one that I just mentioned earlier, the racial justice one in Santa Monica. Shut. Okay, not gonna worry about that. Anyway, so there we go. I now have I've got a thing that I want to do. It's gonna be fantastic, and I'm looking forward to it. Let's check out. I'm going to call a stream in a couple of minutes because, as per usual, I'm fantastically tired, and I very much want to go to bed. I always somehow manage to go to bed at some ungodly hour. So, at any rate, where are we? Babylonian Talmud Tractate Barakoth. Do I have that written down? I have all these weird things written down. Barakoth? No, I don't. I'm going to write down that one too. Barakoth. Barakoth. Oh, that's an R. Whoops. Barakoth. Check out that one too. I'm going to do a couple of Google searches before I figure out what book I'm going to check out. Silver, I could also make an argument against that. It just depends on your faith, brother. Oh, heavens, what were we talking about? Everything is God. Yeah, I don't want to get into theological discussions. I'm going to go ahead and call it out right now. I want everyone to be aware of this. In some sense, I'm kind of blaspheming by LARPing as a Christian, but the fact of the matter is it's an amazing technology, psychological, mental technology, metaphysical technology, and I like it. So I find it to be highly useful, and I use it, and fact of the matter is it really is compatible with many of my views. There are certain things that I do grapple with, like I'm in that awkward stage where, like, I want to believe or whatever, but there are just certain issues, but it doesn't really matter because, again, I say the mental technology is incredible. It's incredible. It's fantastic, and I love it. So whatever. Anyway, the point is that I don't want to deal too much with issues of theology. I would much prefer, even though I know that I'm a hypocrite, I would much prefer that the tone in the chat stay as pleasant and well-meaning as possible. Some of us are Christian and some of us are not. and I'm not going to worry too much about it. As far as I'm concerned, we're all basically on the same team. We're all basically on the same side, and that's really all that I care about. So, anyway, let's see here. SS says, don't dox location. Well, I'm in Los Angeles, and this place is just absolutely gargantuan. So I don't dox too much. I've mentioned now and again that I live just west of Mid-City, so that's not news to anybody. Anyone that's been listening long enough knows that, so whatever. Alright, continuing. Let's see here. Yeah, I've got 539 on this channel. I've got like 750 something, I think, on my alternate channel. So, it's not great, it's not bad, it just kind of is. I kind of like being little, to be perfectly honest. I don't like being big. Let's see here, posted a bunch of links. Okay, thanks, I appreciate it. What do you call, the goal, SS, since you are new-ish, just so you're aware. Yeah, the goal of these streams mostly is just for general discussion and comprehension. That's mostly where I'm coming from. The qualifiers at the beginning, I have yet to formalize what the qualifiers are going to be, but the net of it is going to be that, yeah, this is a stream of peace. There will be no exhortations, there will be no advocacy of any activities or actions. This is just for general discussion and comprehension, no more, no less. So, but just, so that you understand is all. I wouldn't want to misrepresent what this is all about. So, at any rate, freaking Ox Stone. Hey, buddy, how's it going, pal? Freaking word. Awesome. And yeah, of course, peace, love, and diversity. Diversity macht frei. So that's our motto here. Okay, anyhow. We are now at the plus 1 hour mark, so sadly I'm gonna have to call stream because I am flipping exhausted and I gotta go to bed. So as for, I would love to play music and chit chat and interact with the chat. Yeah, this is a stream, so there you go. And thanks Rich D for cheerleading, I appreciate it. At any rate, yeah, so call the stream. This is it, guys. I want to thank everyone for popping in. I will be I'll be reading the next section of this little Talmud introductory tomorrow, and then I've got one last day. No, I've got 2 more days. That's right. So today is the 31st. Or it was the 30th, now it's the 31st. So yeah, I've got 3 more days of reading for this one. And then we're going to go and look into, hopefully, a section of the Talmud dealing with sacrifices, which ought to be a hell of a thing. I'm hoping to get that one. If not, that's fine. But, cross the fingers, see what happens. Wish me luck. We'll see what goes down. Anyhow, again, thank you, everyone. And I did no case streaming today, but just we'll pretend for a moment that I did do some case streaming just for the sake of shits and giggles. If you are going to exercise your God-given right to keep and bear arms as purportedly enshrined within the Second Amendment, which sadly means less these days, but and I do recommend that you exercise your civil liberties. I think that it's important to have in mind the 4 rules of firearms safety. Big fan of safety and handling. There is no reason to handle a tool that could potentially be dangerous in an unsafe manner. So, what are the 4 rules? The 4 rules are, rule number 1, always treat every firearm like it is loaded. Rule number 2, never cover or sweep anything that you are not willing to destroy. Rule number 3, your finger stays off of the trigger until your sights are on target. And the 4th and final rule is be aware of your target and what's beyond it. Safety first. And there you go. And of course, my own pet fifth rule, which is any firearm that is not in use ought to be secured. Secure that shit, Hudson. There's no need to have a freaking firearm wandering around sweeping things. Your feet, for example. Get her in a holster. So, at any rate, all right. I am no, since I'm just the average layperson. That's all I am. I just happen to be into firearms for some reason. I don't know why. It's weird. Strange psychological thing. I spent the majority of my life being basically a blue-pilled normie, really. You can almost think of me as being like Carl of Sargon of Akkad, but I accidentally got red-pilled. Like that's basically what my mentality is. And then one day, out of nowhere, I became aware that the police, they have no duty to protect us. That's from Warren versus D.C. and also Lozito versus County of New York. The police have no duty to protect us, which actually means that we're on our own. And the moment I realized that we are on our own, that's when, just out of nowhere, I was like, oh, well, what's better, a CZ75 or a Glock 19? That's just where it all started. So I do advocate that people have the possibility of defending themselves. That isn't to say that a firearm is going to actually defend you, or rather, it's not going to necessarily be an effective defensive tool or weapon. But because a bad person can always get the jump on you. But at least you have the possibility. The option is there, and that's really all I care about. Whatever. Anyway, so moving on. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I gotta get ready to go for the outro track. Did the closeout of the 4 rules, and oh yeah, that's right. Everyone needs to remember to floss. That's highly important. If crazy things are going to happen in the future, we should absolutely face them with glorious, gleaming white teeth. We should have beautiful choppers, so remember to floss. And I guess that's it. I am now completely delirious and exhausted, and I'm going to go to sleep. Alright guys, cheers, and I'll see you all in the chats.